Hey everyone, welcome to Breakthrough Conversations. My name is Danielle Perry and I am the host. I'm so excited that you're tuned in today for a new episode of this podcast. And if this is your first time, this is a Christian podcast which features people of all ages, and they share a bit of their story about how God has helped them to overcome a difficult challenge, situation, or season in their lives, or maybe they're on their way to overcoming with God's help. And they do share authentically. Well, if you're back, then you know that this is part 2 of episode 40, and it features my friend Shedrick Elliott. And the title of this episode is A Coach's Influence on and Off the Track. If you are a coach or an athlete, you will want to tune in and share it with others, because it's going to truly bless you to not only hear from a coach's perspective, but a coach who is a man of God, a man of faith. If you missed part 1, please go and check it out so that you'll have the full context of Shedrick's story. But y'all, without further ado, here it is, part 2. Enjoy and be blessed. So, you're just talking about the challenges that your students face and how you share Christ with them and, represent Christ to them. And you sent a video to me of basically a presentation that you presented to some of your student athletes. And in the presentation, I was definitely admiring your boldness with sharing scriptures and sharing God. And a part of what you shared was a little bit about your mom, mm-hmm. and also how at a certain age there was a fear that came because of how your mom passed. Mm-hmm. And so I want you to kind of hit on that, because I think it's important that we as leaders who are leading youth, who are leading young people, that we're transparent with things that we go through, right? Absolutely. Or have been through. So talk about what made you even want to share that, and then what was it about? So
I remember going back even a little bit further, because that would have been November of 2020, I believe, when I did that. Okay. But the idea, the relevancy of it was like that summer, 2020. Mm-hmm. But prior to that, when the pandemic hit, I had one of my young ladies who graduates this year. She mm-hmm. was, I think, a freshman, I guess, at that time. Mm-hmm. She was... Before everything shut down, this was been that March. Mm-hmm. It was March, maybe like 2 days before the world just stopped. Mm-hmm. A professor had basically told her, like, the world's about to end. And she said something, I don't want to exaggerate it. It wasn't going to be like, are we all about to die? Mm-hmm. But it was something to the standpoint of, like, is everything, like, just about to be, like, over? Right. And I'm like, oh. Right. Like, I'm getting, not even knowing what was going on. But it was like, girl, please, man, da-da-da-da. And so I remember seeing the panic on her face, and in my brain, it was because of the panic from these professors. Understandably, because again, nothing had happened yet from the standpoint of, I think it was 2 days after that where like all school shut down, everything shut down, get in your house, don't come out. So I remember this was the last day I saw all of them, not knowing that, but I got them all in a group, and I was like, no matter what happens, y'all, don't be afraid. It was something to that effect at the track, right by the 100-meter finish line. I was like, y'all, don't be afraid, no matter what happens. Yeah. But a common theme that our pastors had been saying for years, at the end of almost every service, they were like, y'all, just don't panic. Not knowing what's coming of, and they would just always finish like, y'all, no matter what happens, just don't panic. Okay. And so that became a little bit more real, at this time, whether it was relevant for this or not, as far as like they were preparing us for this, it was just like, so I'm now saying this to my student athletes, like, y'all, don't panic. You're like, we'll be okay. Just simple things like that. Meanwhile, as the summer gets going, I'm battling things. I don't know if I was still battling headaches at that time. I don't recall that specifically. But I remember another situation that we had that really was also getting to me. We were dealing with a student athlete that was really battling a serious case of psychosis, which I had never experienced before, where seeing somebody go to this degree. I had to a degree, but to this degree, from being, sane, so to speak, to a completely different version of themselves. And to me, it was like, man, it seems like they're possessed, so to speak. And you had Abby's situation and this situation were probably my most two difficult situations, where I remember that individual's parents calling me bawling, like, please take care of them, like, please, because they're out of the state, so it's just like, all right, roommates calling me, so I'm going, and I know this individual, and I'm like, this isn't, it's not them, so in walking through that, having to deal with the police at that time, I'm dealing with the powers that be at Hopkins, dealing with all the administration and everybody there, and going back, visiting at the hospital, getting calls from the hospitals, it's all of this. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, 36 is coming. You know, so I'm like, I don't know if I'll make it. And that coming from my mother passing away, she passed away. I want to say that had to be 7 days before her 36th birthday. So that was July 23rd, I believe, when she passed. She was born July 30th, 1954. And so probably back in middle school or high school, one of my aunts, just in passing, had mentioned to me, like, you better watch out. Like, your mother's firstborn. Like, you better watch what you eat, da-da-da-da. Because, you know, what's in her is basically in you. I'm paraphrasing. But what's in her is probably in you.
Wow.
Okay, I got you, da-da-da-da-da. But as I got older and little ailments would come about, in my brain, I'm like, is this cancer? Like, is it? But again, I'm not saying anything. And I was really battling, like, chronic headaches and stuff.
Because of that? Because of the worry?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
It was just as time would go on, I have really bad headaches. And so it was like, is this the beginning of this? Or I remember, especially around like 2010, so now we're talking 10 years prior, I would have really bad chest pains. And so even while I was at Towson, I had really bad chest pains. Go to the doctor, I'd rush myself to the ER, like, and just go in, and they do it. You're fine.
You're fine.
But I'm like, what? No, I know.
Right.
I know what I'm feeling. You know, so just little stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in my brain, I'm like, y'all just not picking up on it. This is the beginning of the end. Like just in my head. And so I've got all of this in my database going into 2020, where, you know, I'm like, now I'm actually getting closer to my mom's, you know, when everything kind of went down for her, so to speak. And I'm like, could this be my fate, you know, as well? While I'm trying to navigate this young man, you know, dealing with, you know, this whole situation and his parents and, you know, all those types of things. And it's just like, oh my gosh. And so Erica sees all of this, and she's like, you need to, like, if there's anybody who's gonna call, she's gonna call my dad. And so he's like, you need to call your dad. I'm like, yeah, I will. But I wasn't. And so I think probably the next day, because this was going on for some weeks, and so it was probably the next day she reached out to him, and immediately he showed up. Immediately in that day, he came and we talked, and you know, whether he was doing it on purpose or not, like some of the stuff he just laughed at, not like but just like, oh, yeah, you know, which actually was calming. Because I think it would have been different if it was like, okay, let's see, we got to go, that leads to, but that's also something that I've tried to take with my student athletes, you know, so it's like, even if things are chaos, I got to stay here, you know, so like coming back to that, we had a situation a couple months ago, had a young lady pass out, completely passed out, zoned out, you know, and I get over there, not panicking, and I could have been, you know, I mean, I'm walking. I felt like Jesus, where, you know, he was like, hey, my daughter died, and he's like, oh, I'll be there. He didn't say it like that.
Right.
But he's like, oh, I'm on my way. You know, like, let me pause, let me help this person out, you know. He's like, what are you doing? Like, you got to keep going.
Yeah.
So it was almost like that, but for different reasons.
Right.
So, you know, I'm walking in, I'm seeing all this panic and chaos, and the EMT are around, everything like that. And so I go up to her, and I'm saying her name, you know, I'm just kind of caressing her forehead, like her eyes are just looking like straight ahead. And inside, I was very concerned. But outside, I'm trying to be calm for everybody else that's around. Now, I will say, the real EMT, when they came, they were calm, which helped me also stay calm. Now, I know that's part of their job.
Right.
But they didn't have no sense of urgency. So in my brain, I'm like, this can't be that serious.
Okay.
Otherwise, they would have just, like, we got to get out.
Exactly.
So I'm like, hey, y'all, it's okay. You know, this, that, and the other. Go to the hospital. We dealing with that. And with that particular young lady, we ended up having a moment where we both cried. Once, you know, I brought her back home. It was just me and her, and we just both cried. You know, so it's like, listen, don't let this happen again.
What was the reason behind?
We don't know. You know, so they kind of ultimately just classified it as like anxiety, panic attack induced, but I don't think it was that at all, because something similar happened before where I saw the signs. This one, I was like, I don't think so. And even then, she didn't recall a lot of what happened, so I had to fill in, you know, some of the details and everything. But bringing it back to this current situation. So here I am dealing with all of this and this fear of, you know, my mom's situation. So I'm sharing this with my dad. One of the things that he gave was a book. It's a book called Make Fear Bow by his pastor. I can't remember his name, but it's his pastor. And I remember I read through all of it, and it was very helpful, you know, for me. He filled in some more gaps where I really just need to be reminded of some of those conversations that I've already mentioned, going back to probably 2002. as well as 2012 about my mom passing, you know, eating certain dietary, you know, things, little stuff like that, things in family dynamics, whatever. And so it's like, okay, I just need to be reminded. But his biggest key to me was my words. And so he was like, you just got to be very mindful of your words. And so, like, you're speaking against, yes, you might have a thought or a feeling, but you need to counter that with your words.
That's good.
And so it was just like, okay, all right, well, that's what I just began to do. Knowing good and well, feelings wouldn't always go away, you know, per se, or they come about like, okay, I got to deal with this now. So let me just go ahead and say something now, which was honestly something that I was already teaching my student athletes just in a different way. And so now this was becoming a little bit more real to me, you know, so to speak. And so I remember when I shared that whole, because I feel like it was about an hour or so when I shared that. And I mentioned to you before we got on, like, I'll get like nervous knowing when I have to talk. It's different when I got to just like, hey, can you just say something? Oh, yeah. But when it's almost like a planned thing, I'm just like, internally. But that's not what's coming out, you know, so to speak. But I remember going in and I'm like, man, they're not going to want to listen to me. Because it was almost not forced, but we already know every year Shed's going to talk. So in my brain, I'm like, oh, here we go again. Shit, they got to say something, you know, so this, that, and the other. And I'm entertaining those thoughts. And then when I get on Zoom and I see somebody's face that looks like, I'm like, oh, God.
I know, right?
I can't look this way. And so I had a young lady named Jackie. Unfortunately, her father passed away, I think last May. We went to his funeral. But she's such a bubbly, always smiling, just everything like this. So I'm like, okay, Jackie, this whole time, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you. And I told her beforehand. And I'm like, you are going to be what's going to help keep me, you know, going. And I start looking at somebody else. Oh, it's going to be. My thoughts are going to go off. I'm like, all right, y'all, we done. And you're like, get out of here. You know, so my whole tone would just completely change. And so, but I remember when that was all said and done, it was around like 20. It was probably more, but I definitely remember around 25 hitting me up via text, email, just thanking me for even sharing. I remember one sharing, she had lost her father. I never met this girl. Hadn't met her because we were also in the pandemic. She was a freshman, had lost her father. And she began to share, like, you know, I don't think I've ever really dealt with, I'm paraphrasing, some of those emotions and those feelings. I'm just like, wow, thank you so much for sharing. You know, so just little things like that. And I also know, I've always known this, which is part of why I do it, the more genuine, I like that word, you said that last time, genuine I am with them, the more personable we can kind of really become. Yeah. And I really ultimately want to help them mostly with life versus, as much as I am a coach, I do tell them, I was like, y'all, we can simplify this. And I say to them to also remind me, y'all, we running around a circle and we getting stressed out about how fast or slow we run in a straight line or a circle. When you put it like that, that is really stupid. At the end of the day, it's so stupid that I'm sitting up stressing about why can't she run half a second faster? Or why can't he drop 0.2 of a second in a straight line? Like, y'all, this is so dumb. But that's my job. Yeah. And, you know, so I'm like, that's my job. And so it's like, no, I want to help with real life, but there are still some parameters in there. I'm like, this is how it has to be. I understand that we all have real emotions. Don't come to me very emotional, though. So until those have settled down and we can actually talk this out, don't catch me in the heat of your you know, process. I remember I had one young man came to me right after his girl found out his girlfriend was cheating on him. And I mean, he just sniffing his knife. Like, I'm like, all right, slow it down. You know, just like calm down. Just like, now it was in the moment, so it's like, let's take a walk. You know, so let's bring these emotions down so you can actually say, well, because now you're just saying stuff off the top. Of your head. Like, you hate her? No, you don't. You don't hate this girl. You just found this out, so now it's just changing, you know, your mind. But I'm honored that I'm like the first person that you came to, you know, to kind of, you know, share that with. Like I've had so many of those situations, but that's what I want to help with. But it's still in the parameters that I'll kind of set. Like, all right, you gotta calm down, and that's what I approach myself with. Where it's like, okay, I could be upset about, okay, let me bring this back. I think I said that to you in one of my emails a couple days ago. It was like, even I might pause too long, but I'm like, let me get my emotions together so I can really communicate what I'm really trying to say versus just topping off at the dome. And so I'll try to teach that, especially with the young ladies. I feel like my guys are a little bit better at that, but even then, I actually had one of my girls come up to me and correct me, which is like, well, no, Shed, I don't think it's that. I think they just aren't willing to just share, which actually bothered me. I was like, nah, I ain't He's like, nah. And I'm just like, she's probably right though. To that degree, where the girls have just tended to be more forthcoming, about things.
Right.
And I was that guy, in college, I wasn't talking to my coach about anything.
Right.
I wasn't talking to him about training.
Right.
So let alone, hey coach, I'm dealing with this challenge.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
Right.
What? It's like, nah, that's all here. So I get that and I understand that because I was one of them. But it's typically their junior, senior years. And I got to be patient with that, where it tends to kind of come around. Every now and then you'll get some freshmen, sophomores that are very, as guys, that are very more willing, to kind of share.
Okay.
And so I've been thankful that I had a young man. Unfortunately, his sister passed away. It was around Thanksgiving. Remember he called. She passed away from cancer, 26 or 27. I remember he called me. This was in the calendar. And so this was one of the memories he put in the calendar where, oh my gosh, it hit me. He was like, you have always been, anytime I have a real serious challenge, you're the first person that I go to. And I was just like, dang. I mean, it was in September. When he called, I was in Michigan. He called me. I'm at the cross country meet, calls me to share, what's going on. And I'm just trying to encourage him, And I remember at that time I told him, I was like, well, listen, man, once some of this settles down, I'm more than, because at this point, my mind is thinking about her soul. And so I was like, I'm more than willing. She lived in North Carolina. I was like, I'm more than willing for you because I love you, man. I'll go down to North Carolina myself and go pray with her. Like, just ask. Now, nothing ended up happening in that regards. I was like, I'm more than willing to do this for you.
Wow.
Because of also the impact that he's had on my life.
Right.
And so just like, it's been so many of those. But taking it full circle to the situation with that presentation, it was around 25 or so that had reached out. And honestly, when, we kind of was talking about this and I went back and watched some of it myself where I'm like, oh, dang, I do remember that, so some memories kind of come back because that was almost 4 years ago now, 3 to 4 years ago. Okay. So I've got so many more since then where it was just like, oh yeah, that was good. And I was so glad I recorded it. Yeah. Which I try to do more often is record. I'll record it for those that weren't there. And I'm like, hey, y'all, you can catch this out if you ever want to catch it out, this, that, or the other. But I think it's also a good reminder for me, almost like how this calendar is. Yeah. Where it's just like, oh, wow, look at this. Some of them were smiling, laughing, whatever the case may be. And that was in the midst of the pandemic where I had to kind of go about things a different way to prepare them to receive, so to speak. Gotcha. Whereas like in this digital world. But yeah, no, that was a good time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the general, I guess, issue or like what do you feel like you help your students with the most?
I think right now the most I would say serious is not the right word. Most common, I think, is what originally I was going to say, navigating the unknown, where it's certainly centered around anxiety and fear of what could happen, somewhere down the road, the future. So this was Sunday, Mother's Day. We're in the van and one of my girls, I'm just listening to them. And there's about 5 of them, I think. And I'm just listening to them, and she's talking about this class that she has to take in the fall and how stressed out she is for it. And so after she's done, I pause. I'm like, hold up. Let me get this straight. So you're stressed out right now for something that's 3 months away because of somebody else's experience. Somebody else's experience in the class. You're stressed, like, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out. Right. Why? Like, you're not even done this semester. Right. And you already added all this stress for something, and it actually could be okay, for you. And I'm not saying that there's probably is some validity to that other girl's stress, but you ain't got to take on all this. Right. And so I addressed this in the van, because that is, even though that's a smaller situation, that's big for them. And that is normal. Like, that is the way of probably a bunch of places, but definitely at Hopkins, where it's just stress. If you aren't stressed, really something wrong with you. And so it's just like, okay, all right, y'all, we got to break this. I remember I had a young lady who I overhear. A lot of times it comes from me overhearing conversations. It's not that they'll come to me directly like, okay, shit, I'm stressed. It won't be like that. Okay. I'll just interject as I'm hearing something. And I remember one time we were just sitting on the steps and one of the girls was talking about some internship, not finding internships and this, that, and the other. And so I'm like, hey, how many have you applied to? And she said, it was some big number, like let's say 10 to 20, something like that. And I'm like, well, how many can you actually take once that time comes? She's like, what do you mean? How many can you actually be a part? Well, one. So I'm like, all you need is one. She's like, well, yeah, I mean, if you say it like that, I'm like, all you need is one. You don't need 10 to 20, but which is what they want. They want 10 to 20 to then I'm deciding which one of these 10 to 20. He was like, you just need one person to believe in you. And that has been the cycle for so many. Like, a lot of our student athletes go to med school, go to grad schools, et cetera, and so they'll apply because they're told, and I get it, I'm not coming against the process. You apply to like 15, 20, 30 schools, hoping that you get in like 2 to 3. And so when those denial letters come in, that's bringing on a bunch of anxiety, like, oh my gosh, is it going to work out?
Right.
Yeah. And I'll tell them this is my 9th year. I was like, I've gone through this 9 years now, and I've only had one person that didn't end up somewhere. Call it, there's probably 25 that ended up somewhere.
Right.
One that hasn't, but she's still trying. And so I'm like, the chances of, let's say 24 out of 25, I don't know what that percentage is, but I know it's in the 90s. I'm like, I'm sure you'll be okay.
Yeah.
You know, so and then they stress over, oh my God, had one, oh my grades, I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, we talking about what's struggling for you? Said like, you don't understand what's struggling. Well, I'm asking you to clarify. What's struggling? Struggling is keeping the A. I'm like, that's not struggling to me. I'm like, struggling to me is I'm barely surviving. I'm barely, if I'm talking grades, holding on to an F or an E or whatever. Because it was like, there are no E's, I think they said. So I'm like, F, whatever the letter is.
Right.
I'm like, that's struggling. Holding on to an 89 average, well, we had to get a curve. So what? That's not struggling. Now, I'm not trying to put down their experience.
Right.
I'm really trying to paint a more realistic picture for them to go through with a better mindset.
Right.
So that you're not out here, oh, no. But that's also their environment.
Yep.
You know, so I had one of my young ladies who I believe has a 4.0 through 2 full years of college. She's going to med school eventually. We'll go to med school. She's probably graduating early. One of the things that she had told me, her whole friend network is everybody's part of why she pushes herself so hard. Everybody's like, it's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. Even her family, it's not enough. It's not enough. How much perfect can you get with your grades and your extracurriculars? Like, I think it's enough. Like, I think
4.0.
I think you'll be okay. Yeah. I'm like, I'm pretty confident you'll be okay.
Right.
And then there's been so many that once they're there, they look back and it was like, man, I didn't even need to do all that. And so I'm trying to tell them this now in the moment, but I think it's harder for them to take it from me because I never was in that moment.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not in it right now.
Right.
I'm talking to them confidently off the experiences of so many others where I'm like, y'all, I saw this before. I've seen this script. You're going to be okay. I'm not telling you that there won't be days where you're crying. Yep, that's going to be part of the process. There's going to be days that you're doubting. Yep, that's part of the process. But I'm already telling you, I got a good idea what the finish line is going to look like.
Yeah.
You're going to run through it just like this and be just fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so the biggest thing in general, even though those are smaller samplings, it does grow in degree. Like, remember one of the examples I gave you was I'll try to use them was conversations, you know, so where it's like, okay, there's I don't want to say there's always going to be a fear of the unknown, but what you don't know, actually I took it from, this is probably not the best quote, but it came from Batman. Jesus. It was the first Christian Bale one.
Okay.
Where the bad guy, he's like, you always fear what you can't understand. He said something like that. And so it was just like, you know, there's something to that. When you don't understand it, like there's a, you know, I kind of want to, I want to avoid it. And so it's like, okay, there's, what we don't know, we don't know something, there's a little hesitancy to it.
Absolutely.
I want to know the route.
Yeah.
You know, so like, nah, I don't want to go, like my bike ride tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like I was watching videos driving over here, which I shouldn't be doing, driving and watching videos. But I'm looking and somebody had posted the videos of the downhill and I'm like, that descent? Like that is crazy. Guy just flying through.
Wow.
But one of the guys was saying, he was like, hey, people have lost their lives coming around these descents. So he's like, if you can't see what's ahead, slow down.
Yeah.
And so I'm that type, like, okay, well, I'm going to move slow because I can't see what's ahead. Now, to a degree, actually not to a degree, it is, God's word is we moving by faith. A lot of times I won't see what's ahead. So I'm like, then I don't want to move. And so I'm just like, nope, until you reveal to me. Okay. Oh, then I really need to, okay, then tell somebody else. And then they tell, all right, now I'll go ahead and take this step. Now show me the next one. And
absolutely.
so it's just like, so I get it in that regards. I just feel like I've already gotten, like I've been blessed to get a good idea of possibly what their futures look like to a degree, even in a generic form. Like, y'all gonna be okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead, take that lead.
Yeah.
Like you'll be okay.
Yeah.
And I want people to say the same thing to me.
Right.
You know, so it's just like, hey, what it's like, you know, like I remember when we bought our house, like what's that like? Show it to me. Eventually being parents, like what's that like? Like give me an idea.
Yeah.
Knowing good and well our story's gonna be different from somebody else's, but at least give me an idea. And a good one. I'm not looking for a bunch of, you know, just it's gonna be rough. Oh, appreciate that. I gotta keep it moving.
Keep it moving.
You know, so I'm like, we're not taking on all of that. I already know there's gonna be some rough patches.
Right.
but it's more, hey, this is the realistic way that it can look. There'll be some ups, downs. Hey, this is how it can challenge this. This is how it can benefit that. Da 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 da. I'm like, okay, then appreciate that. But I know I'm also not always gonna. Probably most times I'm not gonna get that. Right. So I gotta take that leap of faith. And so as I'm doing it, I'm also trying to push my student in a different way. I don't always share with them like every little thing that I'm dealing with, although I want to. But a lot of times I won't. Where it's like, hey, we're actually in this together, even though we're on two different roads, so to speak. But yeah, I would definitely say the most common, and I feel like that's with everybody though. I think they just might not be able to identify it. When I say everybody, I'm talking about beyond 18 to 22, where it's just like, okay, what's down the road? Today's world, we talk about the economy. It's like everything's falling apart. Like da 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 da. I was listening to some dude, talking today. I was not a guy dude, but the secretary or something, talking today, and he's saying things like, oh, it's an unknown, but most people's reactions are everything's tanking. It's fear. It's da 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 da, because we don't really know. We don't really know, and so it's just like, all right, well, what do I do know? Man, thank God. I thank you so much. I'm alive today. So I'm like, man, I'm alive today, God. I knew coming into the day, I walk and pray in the morning. So kind of one of the things that I had mentioned in regards to, if I'm calling it navigating the unknown, almost every morning, I like to just go walk our block and just pray for like 20 minutes. It takes 20, 25 minutes to walk. It's like a mile and a half, maybe 2 miles. I'll just walk and pray, and any conversation that I know is going to happen, I'm praying about that one. Or any interaction that I know is going to happen, I'm praying for wisdom. If there's anything I pray for the most, it's wisdom. And so I'm like, God, I actually really believe that you give me a bunch of wisdom. There's a lot of things that I doubt that I don't get. Or I'll be like, I don't know. I can pray for that, but I don't really believe I'm going to get that. I'm like, wisdom? God, I feel like you really, I feel like you just be depositing it. Like you just kind of, put it in me. And so I'm thankful, God, for every interaction that I have today, that my words are I'm handling it the right way, that I say the right thing, that I do the right thing, that my thoughts, so that I quench any thought that's going to be opposite, because they come like in all kinds of different ways. And so it's like, okay, but that's when I don't do that, not that it's some ritual per se, I know I'm gonna be off. It tends to happen. And so I'm a lot more feisty. I can get a little bit more hostile. And so just like, okay, all right, you know what? This is how I'm gonna navigate the unknown, because I have no ideas what situations are coming my way. Like, I'm curious to see when I pick up that phone, because coming into today, I knew we had a situation this time last year where our housing department was, for some reason, just basically kicking our kids out. Like, y'all need to get out of here, because everybody's moved out, but they were letting them stay some extended time. And I remember it was literally yesterday, a year ago, when we got back, I stayed probably past midnight to help some of them move out into a new dorm. They were moving them into other dorms. So I gave all of them a heads up, this year, we're not doing that. I was like, don't y'all dare call me today. I'm in a studio. I'm not going to be answering my phone. And I was like, and tomorrow I'm going to be out of town on my bike. I didn't tell them that. But I was like, so do not call me. Right. And I was like, I don't want to look at my phone, because I know something going, Shed, I need help. Da, da, da. Sorry. And my heart wants to help. Right. But I told y'all. But there was it was an unknown. Like, that was actually bringing me anxiety. I'm imagining my boss's boss telling me, because that's what happened last year, you have to help them out. You're the only one that's still here. You got to get this done. Wow. And I'm imagining in my head, no, I'm not. No. Man, forget this. I'm done with this job. Like, all of this is in my head, and it don't even come to that. But I'm imagining, and then I'm now creating with something to go. I'm already hostile. I'm already ready to just pop off, because I've created all these imaginary conversations in my head. And that's a small one that's recent, but that happens like every day. And so I'm like, okay, I'll have to like shut that down. Like, yo, what are you doing? Shit, like just stop. I have so many imaginary conversations in my head. Like, it's crazy. It just goes and goes.
I can relate to that. Wow. It's interesting to hear it from a man's perspective. I know I've had this conversation with one of my close friends, a woman. Yeah. But to hear it from a guy's perspective is interesting, because it's like, you don't, or at least me, myself, I wouldn't think that that's something that guys may deal with.
Oh, definitely. Especially even in marriage, So with Erica, I know I mentioned it to you, when we first got married, we both had, I'd say, imaginary versions of each other in our heads. Okay. So like, I remember there was a time where, like, one of the things that I had wanted to do from learning from, I'd say, some other couples that dealt with some struggles with, I'm going to say, the opposite sex. I want to be able to tell my wife, I'm like, okay, like, hey, I saw this fine woman walk past today. I looked a little bit too long. I wanted to have this comfortableness to say something like that to her. But I was like, how might she take this? Okay. And I'm like, well, she might spaz out because maybe you saw something on TV or you heard somebody else's situation.
Right.
And then once I did it, it was like, oh, she like, oh. I'm like, that's it? You know, I'm like, that's
you worked yourself up internally, and then the real deal, real thing happens, and it's not even what she thought it was.
Nothing at all. Yeah. And then that opened her up to be able to, do the same. And I remember, and that was early in our marriage, but it really opened up some things for the both of us early on, and probably kept us from some troubles. Right. So because I could just go ahead and say, like, yeah, then when I was talking to her, like, this thought was coming to my head, like, like, I can be free, just to share those things. I didn't know it until I did it, though, so it's just like, oh my gosh. And so, but that'll still, every now and then, the temptation of, how's she gonna handle this? So where I mentioned to you, I was like, I tend to probably say too much. And when I review it there, it's like, why did you say that? I'm like, so then I'll like, okay,
right.
Don't say too much. Don't say too much. Just bring it in. I don't want to hurt her. I don't want to offend. She's not gonna be offended. Like that's not her. But just those types of things.
Right.
And so, but yeah, we're all guilty of it. I think men are very much so guilty of it. They just probably don't say it too much.
About it much.
Yeah, they probably just don't say it too much. But I know, like, some of my guy friends, we'll talk about, not that we classify it as like imaginary, conversations, but we'll definitely talk about some things, and it's just like, we creating this for ourselves.
Yeah,
like we creating the problem, in our own head.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So speaking of Erica, I want you to just share, how different is it being married and coaching versus when you were single?
Whoo-wee. So I would definitely say, first off, it's way better. Not that I'm typically allowed. So my time at Western Tech as a single coach, I cherish that so immensely. However, I've probably enjoyed my Hopkins experience more.
Okay.
Not that I can really rank them, but I experience it more because I have my wife with me.
Okay.
And so, like, that in and of itself changed the game. And so, not that it's a game, but, and so now I would say coaching as a married man, there are different parameters. There's different boundaries. One of which, where she had kind of put not a policy, but she basically asked me, I want to say this was probably 2017, so it was probably 3 years in, where it's just like, can you basically, after about 9 p.m., don't answer your phone. Don't respond to a text. There's no need. Because it would always be, that's Hopkins, most of their communication is late night.
Is at night.
But regardless of that, it's like, nah, like that's not necessary.
We're at home. We're together.
Yes.
Yep.
So it's like, okay then. And so, and at that time, it was because there were some of the girls that were just like, I don't like this. And so it was just like, all right, cool. So we go ahead and do it. Now, I do think I had some rebuttals initially.
Okay.
Where it was just like, I ain't even like that. Like, I'm just, I gotta take care of things,
right.
Because in my brain, I'm still creating this culture. I gotta create this culture. I gotta create these relationships. I'm finally getting some of them. Like, okay, like, all right, I'm gonna respond. But I had to do that. And now, at that time, that was 6-7 years ago. Now, man, please, I'm not trying to. I ain't trying to deal with this. Like, y'all gonna wait.
Y'all be all right.
But for sometimes it's the wrong reasons. Where I'll be like, man, you know how long it be taking y'all to respond to me? Y'all gonna wait. So I'm like, you are gonna wait. So I'm like, Now that's not the right reason.
Right.
But that'll be like a little,
that's a real thought though.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm like, nope, wait. But like those, and then also in a good way, especially with the ladies, I feel like, also some of the parents as well, I feel like they trust me more now when they see her involved, particularly on the women's side. For my men, it was more like when they would come over, I wanted them to see how a husband and a wife interact. I wanted them to see how I talk to her, how I let her say whatever she gonna say, those types of things. And I'll never forget, this had to be, we were on our way to Boston. So this might have been my first year. This was probably 2015. I stopped. We were in Boston. We were on our way to Boston. We were going to the airport. And we were driving past our old apartment. Erica was there. I was like, hey, I'm coming by camp. I got a rental van with all my guys. I was like, hey, come downstairs. I just want to say bye. So she comes downstairs. I kiss her goodbye. I get back in the van, and they got phones out recording.
Boy.
What are y'all doing? You know, I was like, what in the world? And they was like, man, Shed, don't you know, like, we watch everything that you do. And they said it just plain. It was one of my freshmen at the time. Just said point blank, we just watch everything that you do. And that really resonated with me, where I'm just like, oh, wow. I'm like, okay, then. So I tucked it away, particularly when it came to my relationship with my wife.
Yeah.
Because prior to being married, that was something that I wanted for both my men and my women, like them to see a healthy marriage. Even though it was in its early stage, I was fully confident it was going to be a healthy marriage. But some of them, to a degree, some of them had seen my broken engagement. You know, so because, again, I'm so forthcoming and I was so confident that was going to work out, there was also some shame tied to that. Like, oh, man. Now, my Hopkins kid didn't see any of that. That was my Western Tech group, you know, so we saw some of the parents and all those types of things where it's like, man, they saw me so confident. And that fell apart like, just like a house of cards. Just boom. Yeah, like, okay, all right, well, I'm going to do this again. You know, so like, I'm going to do this again, and I'm going to share the steps. You know, I'm going to share what I did, you know, or what I didn't do, or where I dropped the ball, whatever the case may be. I always was going to continue to be transparent, genuine, vulnerable, whatever you want to call it, no matter what. And so now at this stage, I think more than anything, it's having Erica involved. It's a real reflection of our marriage, our union. And I remember even when we bought our house, which was 2017, one of the things that was important to her, it wasn't as important to me, but it became as important to me, where she wanted us to buy a house that was going to be close to campus so that people could always come over. And that was like, no, we got to be like close to campus. Wow. I'm just like, oh, dang, okay then. All right, cool.
That's like, a good wife right there.
I got an amazing wife. It's unreal. Yeah. Like, and she's been so fully like I've known of other coaches who their marriages are on the rocks. You know, so because coaching is extremely demanding. It's very demanding. You're giving of yourself selflessly around the clock. You know, so really around the clock. And so your spouse has to be willing to allow you to really do that. Thank God up until this point we haven't had any children, so it's made it a little bit easier. And then with a lot of her desires, with her woodworking, everything like that, she's able to kind of, I don't want to say occupy herself, but she uses that time to do other things. Yeah. And so it's just like, oh no, you go, you know, do what you gotta do. You know, I understand. You know, da 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 da. Like, there's never, and when some people say never, they're really lying. There's never been a time where Erica has given me an issue with this. Like, oh, no, you just do it. I was just checking in on you. Maybe I was there till 10 o'clock or something like that. Oh, I was just checking on you. Okay, good. You good. All right, bam. And that allows me just to be real free. So I would say, if anything, even now, as much as I've definitely had way more challenges coaching collegiately than high school, personally, and then also their own situations. But I'm much more confident. I'm a much more capable coach. Because of my wife, she's not even in my corner. Like, she's by my side. And so it's like, okay, we're kind of doing this together. She's pushed me to be, even with her, more vulnerable, I would say, where a lot of the times I come in from home, like, and I still do it. Like, hey, how was your day? I'm fine. I'm fine, you know, so, but I've had to try to, okay, let me try to almost debrief and go through today's activities, which usually is more helpful for me, because I've had a tendency to just keep it in. And then down the road, I snap because I'm carrying all these frustrations. So I'll share them with her more often. You know, and even that more often has probably been over the last year, maybe two, where it just used to be once a month. All right, now I'm about to give you all this. Gotcha. You know, so it's like, oh, there's nothing you can help me with right now, because it's been all done happened. With. I'm creating like trenches in my heart. Like, man, I'm done with it. I'm tired of this. I'm about to go become a cop. You know, it's just like,
there it goes again.
It's just all of that, where it's like, you know, you could just get these out early on, and within 15 minutes, I'm fine. You know, so I'm back to, oh man, it's all good. They're a great kid. You know, great. That's a great guy. That's a great girl. It's all good. Yeah. But when I let it just entrench and I stay quiet, I really start to harbor some bitterness. You know, towards I was dealing with that this week. You know, so I'm like, okay, God, like, please, I'm not going to hold anything against them. God, help me to see them how you see them. Yeah. So my heart can really be soft for them. You know, so even in some of their confusion situations they're dealing with, I'll debate in between, should I go off on this particular individual, or should I just not say anything? Or should I just say something completely different? And I ended up saying something that was completely different, way shorter, which was probably the wisest thing to do. Right. You know, so it was just like, okay, all right. Thank you, Jesus. Yeah. You know, so look, I said all that to say, definitely the difference in maturity as well. But if I had to summarize it all, I'm much more capable because of also my wife Erica's input. Her contributions. A lot of times, and she will be the first to say this though. It's like I'm what's the word? I've been graced and gifted to handle young people. She has not. Young people as in that college, high school age group. So she will be quick to like, kind of like cut them off, so to speak. But I also need sometimes some of that when it's coming from a healthy place.
Yeah.
So like, okay, because I'll just give opportunity after opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, because I'll be like, well, God, you supposed to,
right?
But there comes a point where you gotta, like, all right, you know what, you have to learn this for yourself.
That's right.
And then I tend to also definitely have double standards.
Yeah, I'm
real quicker to exercise that with a guy than a girl, and so I need my wife to be like, you need to put your foot down. On this one, I'm like, I can't do that. They're so they're such a they wouldn't do that.
Right?
Yes, they would. Like they evil. Like she just all kind of. But my God, I'm like, man, what kind of nonsense? Come in, man. What are you doing?
Right.
And I'll just be a little bit different with the girls, and I've started to navigate it. I make a lot of mistakes where I might come off a little bit too harsh. So it's like, okay, and I've shared this with some of them. Like, if y'all haven't noticed, like I'm coming at y'all from a different angle. But part of it is also for different reasons. Where I'm like, I'm going in different stages of my life now. I'm not gonna be here all the time for y'all. Yeah. I can't be. So I'm gonna need y'all to, can you manage this on your own? So I'm almost as if I'm like I'm really your father or your mother, trying to like, I'm gonna need you to figure this out. So I'm gonna need you to figure this out. Yeah. I gave, this was the last thing I say on that. It was the movie called Ray, with Jamie Foxx. It was a scene where I think it's a boy. He's already blind, and he's yelling out for his mom. And she's actually on the corner.
And she's watching.
She's watching, crying. Crying, but she ain't saying nothing. Because he's like, he got to figure this out. So, and that's why I was like, y'all have no idea how much it does hurt at times, even when I gotta push you to grow. Yeah. Where it's like, nah, it hurts, but then once you actually get there, those tears are more of a pain to like a joy.
Absolutely.
Like, oh my gosh, like, okay, they get in it. Yeah. Which encouraged me to do it for the next ones, that come through, and the next ones and then messages like those, and encourage. Like one girl I've been not going off on, but really pushing, and she put in here the first day she met me, she was like, I already knew that I was gonna love you, and I started crying. I was like, I'm like, man, I done gone off with this girl about 4 times this year, 4 times in the last 2 months. So like, get over here. What are you doing? So I'm like, and she just, okay. She just takes it. And I'm just like, oh,
your students make you cry like this.
Oh, they do. Oh, yeah. They just don't see it. And so, Erica jokes on me all the time, like, you are such a waterhead.
A waterhead.
I just get real reflective. Yeah. Nobody really sees it. It's just when I'm by myself. Yeah. And I just begin to think. And I just become super thankful. I'm like, man, God, thank you so much. I thank you for these opportunities. I'm just thankful that I'm even in this position. But I also have to do that for the reasons where I lack thankfulness. Primarily my paycheck, so where I'm just like, why am I doing this? Like, I could have an easier life financially if I was a cop, or doing something else, or it's just like, oh my God, like I had that temptation 2-3 weeks ago. I was like, man, Dunkin' Donuts is hiring about the same amount that I'm getting paid. Why am I doing this? And those are also small thoughts that really like Satan kind of easily put in. Like, yeah, you're right. Like you are underpaid. I am underpaid. Yeah. But it's almost like there's truths that get mixed in. Just like with Eve in the garden, there's little truths that kind of get, mixed in. Hey, I am made in God's image. He's holding out on you too, though. He's holding out. And it's like, what? And so, but what I did was I had to immediately share it with Erica. Yeah. And so she's like, yeah, shit, that's real. But Yeah. And so it's like, no, you're right. Yeah. And so then within like 10-15 minutes, I'm back to normal. Yeah. Where I would keep it in, and then that situation, man, I ain't dealing with this, I ain't dealing with that. Right. And then it just builds and it builds and it builds. And so if anything, her being with me, like us walking this journey, has allowed me to keep going. There's no way. If she wasn't here, I'd have walked away from this. Probably after the first year. Wow. Yeah.
Well, I love that because that just shows that God put you two together, and that you you both know that it's bigger than the money.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, you're impacting souls. It's bigger than just being a coach, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're actually ministering to these people all the way back to Western Tech.
Absolutely.
Like, it's been ministry.
Yep.
So I think the last question I have for you is, I want to kind of go back to the beginning of this, where you talked about your weight in high school, right? And how that just played a big part, I guess, mentally and emotionally for you, because you were the thin guy. And the reason why I'm going back there is because throughout this interview, you've said how much you've internalized things and how, you know, you've kind of kept things inside. And at some points, you know, it was an explosion. And so how does that connect with your high school days and maybe even your upbringing with your dad? So how does that all connect?
It's a good question. So I don't know how much it might connect to my upbringing with my dad. I can tell you how much I think it still impacts me now. Because Erica will say it to me all the time. So I always had a part of what kept me from, I'm going to say, making some bad, call it sexual decisions, was I was always insecure with my body. And so she'd be like, "Shit, look at you. Like, you look like you play in the NFL." I'm like, "No, I can't. Like, I can't do this. I can't do that." Because I would still see me as how I saw myself as this skinny, scrawny kid in middle school or high school or whatever the case may be. To this day, you know, so where she's like, "Man, Shed, your thighs are so this." Or, I'm like, "No, they're not." Like, and I really don't see it.
Wow.
It's almost like there's a film over my eyes. And so, like, not that you asked this, but just literally like 2-3 days ago, I took a video of myself while I was like, "Oh, wow. That's not what I see when I see me, even when I look in the mirror." But it was a different reflection in the video. I'm like, "Oh, that's what Erica's
That's what she's talking about."
Yeah. I'm like, "Hey, I didn't even know that was there."
Right.
I'm like, "This is my body." You know, so I've been here for almost 40 years now. And so it was just, I think the way, I kind of said it in a different way earlier, where it was like gifted people, they don't see themselves, so to speak. And I've always viewed myself as like this small, little, scrawny guy. And so I think physically, but then I think I don't need to say anything because I'm like this, my voice doesn't really matter as much. My stature don't matter much. My voice don't matter much. And then you tie that to as men, where men a lot of times will measure ourselves, whether they say it or not, based off their pockets. So my wallet or my bank account or whatever. And it's like, "Dang, I ain't got much in there. I ain't got much." And so that's just kind of where it would kind of be. And so, and that's still a battle, you know, so to this day. And but early on, one of the things that drew me to Erica was none of that stuff mattered to her. So I realized it really just mattered to me. And it still matters to me, where it's just like, "Oh, God, I'm gonna need you to help me change this." And truthfully, he probably already has, you know, through situations. I just keep finding my way back to where I was like, "Oh, man, I needed to be, and I needed to look like this, or I need to be like this, or whatever the case may be." I think a big part, is also social media, where, like, even for me coaching, I mentioned how I struggle with science. Today, I had to unfollow a couple very capable coaches because it just makes me feel so incapable. Like, I just can't. I'm not understanding what he's talking about. I'm like, and there's so much success that he's having where I'm like, you know, I can't.
So you found yourself comparing.
It's just nonstop comparing. So I'm like, "Nah, I can't." All right, this is literally before I got here. It was probably around 10. I just got to unfollow. That's all, which is an easy fix. Where that's nothing against him. This really don't have much to do with him.
Right.
This is me. And so I'm like, okay, you know what? So that I'm not continually down in myself when something isn't going right for my group, like on the track. Like yesterday, we went to the meet, great meet. I don't think we walked away with one performance, whether it was my athletes, other people's athletes, but I was only coach there. Call it, we had, let's say, 25 races. I don't think not one person, other than our women's 4x4, do better than what they had done prior. And at the end of the meet, one of my girls comes up to me like, "What happened?" You know, so I'm like, "Man, I don't know." And she's, you know, like, not just our team, I'm paraphrasing. She was like, really all the other teams, like, nothing happened here that was better than. And we came in with the expectation, we're getting our national qualifiers, or we're solidifying our national qualifiers. The national list comes out today at 8. And so it was like, okay, we're walking away from here having solidified our spots. And we didn't really do that. And so, but then I'm seeing other other meets, like they just flying. And so it's like.
So I've noticed just throughout this conversation that you've been very open and transparent, which I'm not used to seeing from a lot of men unless maybe they're close to me. And so I definitely appreciate that. And hopefully that will even encourage men who are watching to be more open and honest. So kind of talk about like, why, how, where does that come from?
Yep. So that definitely came from my interactions with my pastor, really going back to when I first met him, 2008, 2009. But I can remember even more vividly right now where it was right before Indoor Nationals. So this had to be March 8th, 9th, or 10th-ish, where I had kind of hit him up at the end of service. I'm like, hey, Pastor, are you going to be around Wednesday? And he immediately interjected, like, why do you need me to, do you want to talk? And so I'm like, well, I mean, I really just need you to open up the church so I can vacuum.
Yeah.
But there are some things that I do want to talk to you about. And there were some things that I had wanted to talk to him about that Erica was like, you should really talk to Pastor about. But I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to get to it, which really meant that I'm not going to get to it. And so we planned for that Wednesday. It was like at 1 o'clock or 1:30 because I remember I was running late. And so I texted him because I'm like, oh my gosh, man, I'm so sorry. I'm stuck in traffic, da-da-da-da. So I get there like 15, 20 minutes late. He's just waiting on me. We ended up talking for over 5 hours. Because I remember our pastor does a Wednesday night live. At that time he was at like 7. And we're going, it's like 6:30. And I'm like, Pastor, you do know you're about to go teach. Like y'all do that on, I think, Tuesday nights, kind of something similar. I'm like, you about to go from talking to me for 5 hours to now you giving the word in like 30 minutes. And so, but during those 5 hours, like I had about 7 questions that I had came up to him with. And so I think after the first one, it was kind of like even how I've been doing all this talking and you're kind of answering the questions. It was reverse. I asked a question, like I've come to talk. I'm saying a few things with a question. He takes it and runs.
Wow.
And I learn by stories, and my pastors tell so many stories. And so I'm just taking things in. I remember at one point, it was probably maybe halfway through, I start crying. Like, Pastor, if you don't already know, if there's anybody that really benefits from your transparency, it's me. Because that has also built my confidence to do the same thing. And one of the things that I've learned from him where he has shared was, he's like, there's a risk, with all of that. However, you can't bring about shame for something that I'm sharing freely.
Right.
And so for me, and I've had situations where, like, I remember it was a time in, this had to be 2008, 2009, 2010, somewhere in that time frame, where I was sharing with some of my guys publicly. It was a bunch of my guys in the bottom hallway at Western Tech. And I'm talking to them about pornography. And I alluded to at Hopkins, I've done that with some guys at Hopkins. It's complete, like, there's nothing wrong with this. Like, it's like a TV show. It's just, it's like watching Friends or something like that.
Wow.
And so I'm like,
it's crazy that is
it's just
what it is today. Wow.
Completely different, environments. But at that time, there was something a little bit more secretive to it. And so I'm sharing this, struggle, which was also a current struggle at that time. So it's 12 years ago or 13, 14 years ago. But at that time, and I remember there was a young man who I found out either that night or the next day had put me on blast on Twitter about all of those issues and struggles and everything like that. But did it hurt? Sure. But it didn't bother me to not do it again, because you can't shame me for something that I'm freely sharing. Right. And there's no shame, there's no guilt here. I'm doing this really as a benefit for you.
That's right.
But Satan could use that to cause me to just want to, like, clamor up. Yeah. And I'm not going to share anything, which has happened before around different subjects. And so just like, okay. And so as I've watched his example, it's motivated me to continue to do the same thing. And then there have also been more successes than there have been retractors, so to speak. And so with each success, I develop more confidence. I'm saying you as an individual develop more confidence to keep going. Yeah. And so I'll just keep going and not dwell too much on, any pushback, so to speak. And so, but yeah, that is definitely based off the example that our pastor has set. And that's for everybody. He obviously does it for all of us. That I also take on. I've said this to others, where anytime he's talking, especially about particular subjects, he could be talking to 100 of us. I take it as if he's talking directly to me. And so I tend to, like, I'll be like, yeah, I was talking about, wait, let me rephrase it. So my pastor was talking to us, but I'll take like, oh, he was talking to me. you know. So he was talking to me, even though he was talking to a group of us.
Right.
And so my perception of that, it just is, I'm planting what's been the lesson, so to speak, in me. And I'll say it produces a fruit somewhere down the road. And so that's where that boldness has come. If I wasn't connected to him, I don't think I would have this boldness. But God knew that. So he knew, like, okay, let me connect him to the right people. I already got this boldness that from watching my father's examples. Then it's like, okay, for where I'm at right now in this stage of my life, I need the example that I'm getting from my pastor. You know, so we're just like, I need to see his tears. I need to see like his pain to a degree, yet he's still smiling, yet he still keeps going. He deals with it, he shares, but keeps going. You know, he finds things to enjoy and to latch on to. And it's like little things, having fun. That was one of the questions Eric wanted me to ask. Like, ask him how he has fun. Because you need to have fun. And so it's just like, okay. Right. He's so intentional with things and da-da-da-da. And so I'm just like, okay then. And so we dive in and we touch on all, and that could seem simple, but that's part of the ingredients to keep going. It's like, hey, you got to find some time to just also how to leave things here. How do you leave all these interactions that you have with people knowing that people are disappointing you? And I say disappoint, they're not doing anything that you told them to do. Why would you even want to keep telling them? You know, so and it's like, and how do you not carry that? How do you not carry the responsibility of their mess ups as your mess ups? You know, just little things like that. So but I can ask these questions and he can give me answers. You know, so and if there's certain things where it's like, hey, I might have to get back to you on that. Hey, I'm gonna get back to you on that. Hey, I'm gonna send you some resources tied to this or to that. Like, check this out. And so it's like, okay, then. And so I definitely believe like God has blessed me with individuals along this stage to allow me to keep going. And so just being able to tap into those resources, that's my responsibility. And so,
Wow. That's so good. As you were talking, I was just thinking, you know, we have to remember that ministry isn't just done within the four walls of the church, but it's done outside of those four walls. And what you're doing is absolutely ministry. So I just want to encourage you with that, you know, to keep going. I'm glad that you have Erica by your side to just help you and push you and encourage you, even though it's funny because you said that age group isn't, like, she's not called to that age.
She would say that.
She was the one that said, let's buy a house close to the campus.
Very true.
So that's awesome. And so, I'm just glad that you have such a great wife. And again, just keep going. And like I said this before things got technically difficult, that I do believe that God is going to bless you financially and reward you for the fruit of your labor. And the most important reward we know is in heaven anyway, right?
Absolutely.
And so, just keep going.
I will.
And I know that your students are blessed.
Yes.
I know that they're blessed by you.
And they are a blessing.
They
are.
I love it. So before we just end, I want you to go ahead and share any advice, any encouragement that you have for anyone in your shoes.
Absolutely. So I would say the biggest thing, and it could come off generic, but is to just really be in the moment. And so focusing on today. And so like earlier today, I closed my eyes a lot because I see what I was seeing earlier. But I was walking. I went to go East Perry Carryout to get Erica some breakfast. She wanted some pancakes today. So I went to go get her some breakfast. I'm walking back and I'm like, all right, God, you know, like basically I need some more money. And so I'm like, okay, but I know your word says it's in Matthew 6:30, 27, 28, somewhere in that range, where I'm asking God, show me what really seeking the kingdom of God really looks like, because you said, well, your word says that then all these things will be added unto me. But then piggybacking even further, a little bit ahead of that, where it talks about the sparrows or the lilies being taken care of, and you know they do all this, but they not thinking about you know, oh, we got a store for you know like they're just living, you know. So he's like, if I can do that, don't you think I can take care of you too?
That's right.
And so it's just like, okay, God, well, this is what your word says. So I'm gonna need to see this. You know, I really need to, you know, see to show that. And so, but I realize when I'm not thinking 2 weeks down the road or 30 days down the road, or certainly not a year or more down the road, I'm good. When I'm in this moment, I'm good. You know, so where I'm like, okay, God, give me the wisdom that I need to get through today. Whatever my conversation is with today, the interaction today, whatever that is, give me my supply for today.
Yeah.
And for those watching, if you can be in the moment today, then you've put yourself in a better position to not be overwhelmed by anxiety. I think anxiety, and we probably alluded to this a little bit earlier, but I think most anxiety comes from really an expected, a possible expected end, so to speak, versus a current condition. It's more, where's this going?
Yeah.
And then Ness was kind of like adding, it's just like, which
Right.
makes the current a whole bunch of chaos.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be. Even though it could be there's a little bit of turmoil in it, it doesn't have to be as blown up as it is, but it's typically what we're thinking about down the road that adds to that. And I'm 100% guilty of that. And I have to bring myself back quite often.
Yeah.
I mean, multiple times over the course of every day, bring myself back to this moment, bring myself back to this moment. I'm like, okay, I'm embracing this, whether it's in a conversation, an interaction, like even, hey, keep my phone down, keep my phone off. I'm not paying attention to the vibrations or whatever. I'm in this moment, so especially with my student athletes, because I have learned this over the 17 years, God, you can be using this interaction to benefit me. So it's really a mutual benefit. They came to pull something from me, so to speak, but he could also be using them to pour into me or pull something out of me that's also helping me.
Yep.
And so that's what's like, but I got to be intentional.
Yeah.
And that could be his way of providing, like, don't be distracted by other things that are distracting.
Yeah.
Be in this moment, because that is me providing for you.
Right,
And
right.
so I would be encouraging really everyone to do as much as they can, as much as it's up to them, to really just live in the moment.
Yeah.
If you can live in the moment and be focused on what's in front of you versus what's possibly down the road, I think you'll be in good hands.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. And you did say that you're going to share this with your students.
I definitely am. Yeah, I'm sending it to them. And I know most are definitely going to listen to it. They first going to look at it and be like, dang, Shed, you talk for 2 hours? They're already used to that individually, one-on-one. And so they're like, oh my gosh, shit. But there's going to be plenty over time, whether it's 2 months, 3 months, whatever.
Yeah.
They're going to go back and definitely, check it
Yeah.
out. I'm excited to share it with them. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, y'all, so don't get, some of them will probably like, that was me that he was talking about. Like, don't trip.
Yeah.
Like, it's all good. It's just being used,
Yeah.
as a lesson,
Yeah.
per se. But I still love every single one of y'all.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to take personal. So it's all good.
And just know, like he said earlier, I know that he encourages you all a lot, but you also encourage him.
100%.
And whether you know that or not, and as leaders,
It's necessary.
like I co-lead a youth ministry with my husband, we need that.
Definitely.
We need that encouragement
Definitely.
to know that we're actually, doing well, leading
Yes.
you guys, and we're not perfect, right? But that encouragement helps so much.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
thank you, Shedrick.
You are more than welcome,
I
Danielle.
appreciate you so
Absolutely.
much.
Absolutely.
Oh, Lord.
Absolutely.
This was the first time I've done this without Jared. So what I'm going to
did it.
do is I'm going to make sure I give you something for this, because this
no,
was
you're
just too
good.
much going on.
Yeah, no.
No, I got you. I got you. I have to bless you in some way, because this was just a lot.
Well,
so I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode. I truly hope that it has blessed you today. And I do want you to share it with someone else that they may be blessed and encouraged as well. If you haven't yet, go ahead and hit like. I want you to leave a comment letting us know something that stood out to you today. And also subscribe to the channel Breakthrough Conversations if you have not already. In the meantime, enjoy your day and be blessed.